Hey everybody, today I'm going to go over the second PowerPoint for Unit 4, talking about individual rights and limitations. So today we'll be covering basically all the amendments to the Constitution. So the Bill of Rights and then the 17 amendments added later. All right. So Article 5 of the Constitution, as you may or may not remember from Unit 2, this is about the amendment process. So the founders knew that the Constitution was eventually going to need to be adapted, changed in some way. So they added the amendment process in. All right. So amendments to the Constitution must be added by either 2/3 vote of both the House of Representatives and the Senate, or 2/3 of the states can call for a national convention to propose a new amendment. In order for this new proposed amendment to be ratified, 3/4 of the state legislatures must approve it, which is 75%. So today, that's either 37 or 38 states. In the past, that's obviously been fewer since we've not always had 50 states. All right, so flexibility of the Constitution. Flexibility is, the ability to adapt or change, right? We talked about on the previous slide, the amendment process allows the Constitution to be changed. You can add things, you can delete them, you can alter them to deal with certain unforeseen problems. This is important because remember, the Articles of Confederation, our first major government, didn't hardly have any flexibility whatsoever. You didn't have the power to tax. New process allowed Constitution to be changed, so that's a good thing. All right, so ideas in the Bill of Rights. You got civil liberties. All right, this is the freedom to think or act without government interference. One thing that I think a lot of people don't realize is that the Bill of Rights were added after the Constitution was passed. The Bill of Rights were added within the first year of the new government taking place in 1789. And remember, they were added because the Anti-Federalists wanted them in there. All right, and the Bill of Rights and civil liberties all encompass all of these things. All right, so the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments, here they are. I'm going to kind of go over them quickly. All right, so Amendment 1 deals with RAPS: religion, assembly, press, petition, and speech. You have the freedom to all of these things. The Free Exercise Clause states that, Congress cannot make any law prohibiting the free exercise of religion. Therefore, you can worship whatever you want to or nothing at all. The Establishment Clause: Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of a religion. Ties right in there with the Free Exercise Clause. So you have the freedom of religion, the right to assembly. So if you don't like something, you can form a protest or join a protest. Freedom of the press. This gives the press, the mass media, like we talked about in Unit 3, the right to cover anything that they want to. The right to petition. If you don't like something, you can start a petition. You can lobby your local congressman to maybe take something up that you don't like, or so on and so forth. And lastly, freedom of speech, right? It speaks for itself. Amendment 2, the right to bear arms. This is the actual wording in the Bill of Rights. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So the well-regulated militia part often kind of gets left out nowadays. People kind of tend to forget about that because they're just focused on the right to bear arms part. But back before the American Revolution, militias were like local. Think of them as not necessarily local police forces, but like local volunteer armies. All right, and that was because there was not a United States at the time. There was not a national military, so you kind of had to have these militias, and they would keep and bear arms. So really, this is kind of like a product of the time that over the years has been adapted to fit certain agendas. All right. Amendment 3, no quartering of soldiers. This was mainly added because, leading up to the American Revolution, a lot of British soldiers were being sent over here by the king to keep order and the citizens of the colonies, future United States citizens, they were being forced to house and feed the soldiers. So they wanted to make sure, the founders did, that this would not be a thing in the future. Amendment 3 hasn't really come up too much. Amendment 4, search and seizure. So you have to have probable cause in order to enter someone's home. There has to be a specific reason for a place, person, or thing. So you have to go before a judge in order to get a warrant. You can't just go in someone's house without having probable cause. Amendment 5 encompasses a lot as well. The rights of the accused. So you have the right to a trial by a jury of your peers. No double jeopardy, which says that you cannot, if you've been acquitted of a crime before, you cannot be charged with it again later. This is to basically prevent police from zeroing in on certain offenders that they really feel are guilty but have been proven innocent in the past. The privilege against self-incrimination, so you have the right to remain silent. That's the Fifth Amendment. That kind of also ties in with Miranda v. Arizona, which we'll talk about later. But if you are really adamant that you don't want to talk, especially like in a trial, you can plead the Fifth. That's what that means. Due process of law, everyone is equal before the law. And then lastly, eminent domain, which says that the government has the right to seize your property and compensate you at or above market value. For example, like, if they're going to build a highway and they want to purchase some of your land, they have the right to do that as long as they fairly compensate you for it. All right, Amendment 6, right to a speedy, fair trial. Has to be an impartial jury. You have to be informed of why and what you're being accused of. The right to an attorney, so on and so forth. Amendment 7, rights in a civil case. You have the right to a jury trial involving $20 or more. States have raised the amount according to inflation over the years because $20 nowadays doesn't go as far as $20 used to back in the 1780s. All right, Eighth Amendment, no cruel and unusual punishment. So this is the exact wording. Excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. So many people would say that, nowadays the death penalty is a violation of the Eighth Amendment, and some people have been saying that from the very beginning. But anyways, just kind of goes to show you there's it's in the eye of the beholder. All right, Ninth Amendment basically says anything that we left out, people have those rights. So the enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. People also refer to this as the et cetera amendment. So, anything that we forgot, the people have those rights. And then Amendment 10 is similar to 9, but it talks about rights of the government, the federal government, and then the state government. So any powers that we forgot to add to the United States in the Constitution, they're reserved to the states. All right, so this is what reserved powers, limited government folks wanted. All right, so over the years, these amendments have been added. So Amendment 11, suits against states, you can sue a state. Amendment 12, the presidential election method, this changed, the runner-up from being the vice president and allowed presidential candidates to choose their own running mates. 13th Amendment abolished slavery officially. That was passed shortly before the Civil War ended and ratified after it had ended. The 14th Amendment guaranteed civil rights to all. This was mainly passed to provide citizenship and equal protection under the law for former slaves. 15th Amendment guaranteed all voting rights to all men. Keep in mind that was all men, not men and women. Similar to the 13th and 14th Amendments, this was directly tied to the abolishment of slavery and giving the rights of former slaves the right to vote. Amendment 16 officially made it legal and constitutional for the federal government to levy an income tax, because before that they had to raise revenue a number of different ways, like certain excise taxes, tariffs, etc. Amendment 17, the direct election of senators. A lot of people don't realize this. Before the 17th Amendment, U.S. senators, we got 100, right? We got 50 states, two senators per state. Before the 17th Amendment was proposed and ratified, the state legislatures, so like the North Carolina General Assembly, they would choose senators to represent the state of North Carolina in Washington and the United States Senate. The 17th Amendment changed that, and now we vote directly on senators. So like this year, Tom Tillis, our incumbent senator, is up for re-election, and Cal Cunningham is running to replace him. If this was being held 110 years ago, the North Carolina General Assembly would be deciding who would be the next senator. And it would almost assuredly be Tom Tillis again, because the North Carolina General Assembly is run by the Republican Party right now. 18th Amendment prohibited the sale of alcohol. And if you're like, wait a minute, it's legal to drink alcohol nowadays, you are absolutely 100% right. We will get to that in just a minute. Amendment 19, women's voting rights. Finally allowed women the right to vote, granted women the right to vote. That was passed and ratified in 1920. So we are coming up on the 100th year anniversary of women having the right to vote. Woohoo! Amendment 20, terms of office. So this dealt with certain powers that people in office have after they get defeated. So a lame duck. So for example, all right, let's just keep with the theme: U.S. Senate. If Tom Tillis loses the election for U.S. Senate in November, the time period that he loses up until he is officially replaced by Cal Cunningham, that would be like the lame duck session. All right, because senators don't take office until the 1st of January. All right, and so that means that throughout the rest of November and December, he's what's called a lame duck. All right. Same with presidents, right? But with presidents, if Trump were to lose, he'd be a lame duck for a little bit longer, because the inauguration is January the 20th. And this term of office also moved up the inauguration to January the 20th as opposed to like March the 4th, I think it was. It was early March originally. Amendment 21, repealed prohibition. So, the government said, wow, well, prohibiting the sale of alcohol really didn't work out, and that just led to more crime. So how about we just repeal the 18th Amendment? And they did. Amendment 22 placed limits on presidential terms. FDR, Franklin D. Roosevelt, our 32nd president. Wait, was he 32nd? Hold on a second. Yes, he was 32nd president. Thought so. He was elected to 4 terms, and though he died like a few months into his 4th term, a few years later, they decided to add an amendment to the Constitution saying the president should only be able to run for 2 terms. So that's what the 22nd Amendment did. Amendment 23, electors for the District of Columbia. So before the 23rd Amendment, Washington, D.C. did not have any electoral college votes. This gave them 3 electoral college votes. The 24th Amendment officially abolished the poll tax. Poll taxes were a way of preventing many poor black people, especially black people, but also some poor whites in the South from being able to vote, which was, very immoral. And it was against the Civil Rights and Voting Rights Act of 1964 and 1965, but they wanted to add a constitutional amendment to make sure that this was officially done with. 25th Amendment, presidential disability. This officially lays out, and I kind of talked about this in Unit 2, this officially lays out the line of succession to the president. So if, say, something were to happen to President Trump, if he were to have a heart attack or something like that, the 25th Amendment would go into effect, and Vice President Mike Pence would officially take on the role of president until President Trump were to be available to serve again. 26th Amendment lowered the voting age to 18 as opposed to 21. This was during the height of the Vietnam War, where a lot of young people were angered that they could be drafted to go and fight in a war, but they couldn't even legally vote until they were 21. So the 26th Amendment made the voting age lowered it from 21 to 18. And then the 27th Amendment was passed in like 91, 92. And that dealt with congressional pay. because, over the years, like we talked about earlier, inflation, whatnot, the value of the dollar, Congress needed to be compensated more fairly for the job that they did, and so that's what that was done for, the 27th Amendment. So as of right now, we've got 27 amendments to the Constitution. Theoretically, there could be more to come. There was an amendment proposed back in the 1970s called the Equal Rights Amendment, which would have officially granted equal rights and enshrined it in the Constitution for women. Making discrimination on the basis of sex illegal in basically every manner of life in the United States. But it took a long, long time, and recently Virginia actually became the last state needed to ratify it. But so far, nothing's come of it yet. But there is a possibility that, there could be a 28th Amendment. It might even be the Equal Rights Amendment that finally gets passed after all these years. But anyways, make sure you take the quiz on the next slide and have a good day.